was living a life that I was just not proud of. And yet, we step into the world today and it's like, man, I want, and not to abuse it, but like I need the grace. I
Mm,
need to constantly be reminded of the fact
mm,
that being an a-hole as a husband, as a father,
mm,
business at times, the
mm.
the the addictions that I had, the
Yeah.
sins that I committed, like Jesus has wiped all of that clean.
Mm,
And not only that, but I'll never earn God's
mm,
favor and I'm gonna
mm,
screw up and I need
mm.
grace for it. Like I
Yeah.
need that. But at the same time, and this is a bad word today, but I'll say it anyway. One of the people that I needed screaming into my life the most about 5 years and 2 years into coming to faith was Mark Driscoll. And
Okay.
for all the ways that I am so disappointed in the
Right.
way that Mark Driscoll has handled post Mars Hill and being
Yeah.
unrepentant, and I've had so many friends that were so deeply hurt by him personally. I needed somebody to scream in my face and tell me what an idiot I was for
Right.
doing the things that I did, and those types of sins, that type of thinking had no part in worship of God. And so it's like we need both, but
Yeah.
we just see a culture today, I believe, that is swayed so far to not even real grace, but just this cheap Toys R Us type of grace. And it's ruining our culture and it's ruining men
Yeah.
more than anything.
Oh, huge, huge. It's destroying. It's really destroyed America. We've accepted a form of godliness while denying its power, and that leads
Mm,
me into that aspect of grace in James and in Peter and in the Old Testament. What's the words? God gives grace. God's opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And oftentimes we understand grace as an attribute of God, which it is spoken as an attribute of God, as extending kindness to those who don't deserve it, and that's how we see it. So when we see those verses like gives grace to the humble, we're like, oh, he gives kindness to the humble. However, in the scriptures, God speaks of grace, or the apostles speak of grace in such a way that it's a power of God given to those to live life that's contrary to the world. And so, like
mm,
things like the apostle Paul says, by the grace of God, I am what I am. And in the context of that, he's saying, like, hey, I've been able to do far more abundant things than all the rest of them. Why? Well, because of this power that I've received in humility. And so that leads me to ask a question to myself and to the rest of the church. What is humility?
mm,
Because most of the time we say humility is simply thinking less of yourself. And I
mhm.
want to say that's foundational. It is, but it also means thinking more of someone else, which is God
Yeah,
in this
true.
case. And if we think more of God, what does that mean? That means we submit to more of Him. And so humility is deeply rooted in submission to the scriptures, which is his will given to us, his way of life. And so if we're saying, well, if I submit myself, if I'm humble, I'm receiving more power to live a godly life. But if I'm proud, essentially I'm rejecting God and his ways and holding on to a form of godliness, but I have no power. God resists that. And so we
Yeah.
need humility.